Good evening, one and all. Hope everyone is safe during this pandemic. Welcome to the 37th International Webinar of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College in association with Sophia University, Tokyo, Japan. At the outset, I am happy to inform you all that our evening college is celebrating its Golden Jubilee this year. On behalf of our college, we congratulate all the stakeholders. Today's webinar is fully hosted by the students of Seshadripuram Evening College. I request everyone to kindly pardon us in case of any mistakes. May I now request the theme speaker, Dr. Gramlich-Oka Bettina, Professor Japanese History, Sophia University, Tokyo, Japan, to enlighten us on the topic, Studying Networks in Japanese History, the Japan Biographical Database. Over to you, madam.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today from Tokyo. It's already later in the evening while you're still enjoying the early evening, I assume. I'm not quite sure. Are you usually having all your courses online or do you meet again face to face? So again, as I said, thank you very much for your college, your English department, and everyone who is involved in arranging me to be here today and to talk to you. It is truly a privilege. And when I prepared for my little presentation today, I was wondering, what can I actually show you that would be of interest to you? And since, as I was introduced, I'm a professor for Japanese history, and probably that is not part of your curriculum. I'm not even sure how many history courses you all take during your studies. So maybe this talk will inspire you, not perhaps to study Japanese history, but perhaps to study history as such. And so today I will focus on the studying networks in Japanese history, and I will introduce to you the Japan Biographical Database, which is part of a digital humanities project that I started at Sophia University now almost 10 years ago. So it has been around for many years already, and it's still in the works. It's still not completed, and hopefully there will be more in the future to come. So what does it actually mean to studying networks in Japanese history? And one of the things that I will do today in my talk is really just to introduce you to this web-based resource that we created. I'm a historian, not a programmer, but I have in my small team one programmer who is located in Germany, who helps me with, just getting new types of code implemented into the resource. And I also have a few former students who help me feeding the database. I do also the same with students, sometimes in the classroom. I ask them to help me to improve the database. It is not something that will see any end in any near future, but to the opposite. I hope the database will be growing for the next, decades even. So let me talk first a little bit about the origin and structure of the database, then also the purpose for my own research, what I do with other projects, and also what I do in my classroom, sometimes with the database as well. So the question, of course, is, so what is actually prosopography and social networks, right? Those are already key terms that I would like you to look at the definitions first, which might help you to understand why I chose this project. And in prosopography, as it says here, this is the investigation of the common background characteristics of a group of actors in history by means of a collective study of their lives. So as a historian, I'm very much interested in the lives of historical figures that are not famous. family members that maybe not made an entry into a dictionary, but still the collective life of that family is of interest to the historian. So here in prosopography, the method employed is to establish a universe to be studied, right? So you take out everything, then ask a set of uniform questions here about birth and death, marriage and family, social origins, economic position, place of residence, education, and so forth. So there are all kinds of different types of information that you can gather in a database. And then you can search for certain similarities and also irregularities and so forth. You can combine them and just see how a certain community may have many things in common or not. So that is the idea behind. And at the same time, another approach to a larger group of people is the social network. So here, SNA, probably many of you, someone raised a hand already. Would you like? So with social network analysis, probably many of you are acquainted with it. I mean, you have probably Facebook, you have Twitter, I don't know. You may have many of these social network media already that you use. And for me as a historian, I would like to look into the past and see how people were related, connected by various means. And so these are the two main definitions from where I started and from where I then began my research. So the project itself is settled in the humanities. So I'm not in the sciences. Both, of course, can be used in social sciences. Both of them are also known in biology and different types of the natural sciences. But I choose to think about networks and prosopography very closely in terms of history. I really would like to know more about the study of lives, of collective lives, communities, and so forth. So currently, my database has, and I will show you, we are going online very soon. I show you my database on my browser in a minute. So right now we have fed 9,445 persons of the Japanese history already in my database. Since I want to see connections between these people, we enter events, and I will talk more about these events. And as you can see of these stats, that the most events, the multitude of the events that have been taking place took place during the Tokugawa period. That is our early modern period in Japanese history. And the reason is very simple. This is my research project, and my interest is in the Tokugawa period. So, of course, the sources that we're using as our base or foundation for the database deals all with people of the Tokugawa period. So that is just something for you to know. Tokugawa period is famous for the samurai, famous for the shogun. So this is the before the modern time. Now, initially, when I started that project about 10 years ago, my research focuses on one particular family, the family around Rai Shunsui. He is a scholar in the Tokugawa period, and he recorded his day-to-day life in his diary for about, as you can see, more than 20 years. And his wife, Rai Shizu, she lived longer, and so her diary is also much longer, more than 50 years. And many years of them are parallel. And I wanted to have all these data from the diaries in my database to see what are their connections, what are their relationships, what are their what do they do every day? And one is a scholar, the other one is the housewife, but she also was a poet. And she was, of course, literate, as you can see. She can write her diary. They were very much involved in communities in their neighborhood, but also in communities that were much farther away in Japan, reaching over different cities and towns. So I was interested in that, and that is where I started my database as an input. Okay, so now let me tell you why I think something like a database is necessary. It comes often with the limitations of a dictionary. For instance, when you are working on any type of project and you come across a certain name, a celebrity, a historical figure, someone that you are interested in, and you can Google that person. Certainly, and a Wikipedia or an encyclopedia or a dictionary will give you some information about that person. But it's two-dimensional, right? The information that you have here is basically flattened. There is no depth to it. You cannot see from when to when were they studying somewhere, or they were friends with someone, but when were they friends? How long were they friends? How intense was the relationship? When they moved around, people are hardly ever static. People used to, and even today, all the time, maybe now not so much in these more than 1 year now, we are trying to stay where we are. But otherwise, people moved around, and a dictionary cannot give you a satisfactory answer to that. But a database can. If you do have the data, you can put them into the database, and then you can also pull them out again, and you will find so much more about this person. This is just like a very quick comparison. Like you would have an entry about Rai Shunsui, my main protagonist's son, Rai Sanyo, in a dictionary, one of the main dictionaries in Japan that is published in English. And there's a few names are popping up here, but then if you look at my database, you can see his connections are much more widespread. You can see their different gender. So the green spots are women, the pink here are men, and you can click on these different types of bubbles on top of it. So there is so much more to it, and that is what I tried to explore. So now let me take you actually over. So this is my Japan biographical database that as a team we have worked together. And again, of course, Japan is probably not really your interest, but the idea of this type of biographical databases is not original to my project at all. Actually, we were guided by the China biographical database that is located at Harvard University. And we've been working with the developers there to do our Japan biographical one, although our focus is a little bit different and also how it works is different. In Taiwan, there is another database that is being created. In South Korea, there is now also a database that is created. I have not heard yet about India having a biographical database, but maybe you will be the ones who are going to explore this option. I think every culture ought to have this type of biographical database. So let's just explore what is going on here in this database. And as you can see, we have here 9,445 persons are included. And I mean, it would be now too much detail to show you everything, but one of these data sheets alone is honestly quite elaborate. The feeders, the people who help me feeding it, they have to give lots of information. As you see, there's also still lots of it in Japanese. Ideally, we would be bilingual, and much of the information is bilingual. We divide up basic information. Then we also have, for instance, kinship relations of Raishunsui with others, his nephew, husband, brother, whatever we know about him, and also non-kinship relations. So we have friends, masters, student, disciple, all kinds of connections and events, which makes the social network analysis only possible. The more events you enter, the more you will be able to say about a person's life. So we have different meeting types. As you can see, sometimes a secret meeting with certain people. All these data are extracted from the diary. So when he wrote secret meeting with so-and-so, then we would log that in a similar way, how many people participated, when took it place, who are the other people, and so forth. So meetings are very important. Also are exchanges, and by exchanges we mean mainly letters. Letter writing was always important. Today we do it by email, but in early modern Japan, of course, the letter was the importance for staying in touch with people outside of your closer vicinity. And Raishunsui wrote every day at least one letter. And we have, of course, not everything logged, but we have many of them still extant, and we get the information from here too. Like he sent it and who received it, it was his brother. And so he sends all kinds of information. Okay, so what do we do with this type of information, right? So you have now seen, this is our basic data. Let's go again to the main. So here are different names, and each name that you would click on, you would get a different type of information. Some have more, some have less. It really depends on the sources. And the same is for events, and again, meetings and exchange. So what can we do with this? For instance, we also want, of course, to do visualizations, and we have here in our menu a few things that I want to introduce today of what is possible and what is actually quite fun to do. I actually created already one of the visualizations, so I selected my main protagonist, right? Kinship relations up to the 3rd degree, and just a simple division by gender. So let's see what happens if we try to visualize it. It shouldn't take too long. Oh, there we are. So these are his kinship relationships, meaning family. So Raishunsu is here in the middle, and here we can see who is the brother. So you can get the information about Raishunsu if you click on the dot itself. If you click on the connection, on the link, you can see what it is. One is the brother, this one is the uncle. Here you have the father of the wife, and for each dot, we would have information about that person as well. So you can see all these family relationships that we have. Here's someone almost overlapped. Here the different colors. We can even go to settings and can add new types of different groupings, the way you would like to choose and select your entire net of kinship relations. So this is rather interesting, and you can always go back to that information about one person in the database itself as well. Every family is rather complicated in its structure. Many have, children, young children died often early. You have adoptions, you have second husbands, second wives because of death. There are all kinds of complicated family structures, and this database is one way of how to show that, which is very different to the dictionary, where much of that information would not even be included. Now, for non-kinship relationships, let me also show you how that looks. His professional life in particular is something that we can show, who were his teachers, who were his friends, who employed him, where did, who are his disciples. So again, here, the same structure. Here we see his friends, teacher, master, the connections between these different people. And if you want to know who these people are, you just click on the bubble and then you get the information about them. These layers that we see here, the top, middle, and lower, is ideally to be about generations. So the older you are, the higher up you would be on top. And here the younger ones would be here. But this is still something that we really have to work on, that is not completely fine-tuned yet. But let me also show you something interesting about the events. As I said, the social network analysis is not only about kinship, but also, okay, so how intense, for instance, are his relations when it comes to letter writing? So we have gender selected, visualize the intensity of the connections, and explanations are always on the side, with the time slider, so that you can see what is really digital humanities. This is so different to the analog age, where we can see what is going on. So Rai Shunsui seems to have a huge network of people around him. But let's do the animation, because then you can see from the year how his relations actually evolved over time. He didn't have like 400 or 500 friends at once. No, he started, his network developed over time. And here you can see by the thickness of the lines that this was very intense. Well, that this is his brother. So you can see the brothers were very close. They were writing each other letters all the time. So you can see how new people enter his network, and maybe some others start falling out. So the time slider here is very convenient to see, oh, in these years, he was often in touch with one person, but not so much with others. And maybe if you consider your own life, you have very similar experiences that, there's like one time, 1 month where, you have lots of exchanges with one person, but then maybe not again for 10 years. So this is one way for us to actually to look in this kind of networks and how they develop and the meaning of it. It's much richer and fuller than anything that we were able to show just by writing about it. So this is really the wonderful advantage of working with digital tools in the humanities. Okay, now let me show you one more thing, and then I guess my time is already up too, is here. The GIS is a new feature that we try, which is the Geographical Information System, where we would like to show things on a map. So here too, usually a map used to be two-dimensional, and now with GIS, the Geographical Information System, you have various layers that you can add. And so you can have movements on maps. And that is really what I'm interested in the long run, to show how my main historical figure, Rai Shunsui, how he moved through life, also on a map. So let's just see quickly how it looks like when we look at a few things. So here we see, this is in Japan. I can maybe zoom out quickly so that you know. If you're familiar with Japan, this is the main island. Rai Shunsui, he's from Hiroshima. He was employed there as a scholar. And so here you can see there are 287 events. So let us again start seeing what is going on. And if we click and stop, for instance, in that year, you can see what was going on. So basically, the same type of information about the event that I have shown you in graphs, we will also be able to show you on maps. So here in Hiroshima, you can see that Raishizu, the wife of Shunzui, she met Fuji, which is not written yet in the alphabet. So here we have various people meeting, formalities, what kind of an event, when was it, where was it, and with whom did the person meet. So again, all these little things, then you would ideally see in the future. We hope that people will travel along the roads on the map, and at each destination where they are, you will be able to click on them and then just see what happened at that spot. Anyway, but what I have shown you so far is really only the social network analysis, much more than the prosopography. So my database at this point is still very much focused on events, meetings, something that connects the people directly. The other part, prosopography, that I introduced in the very beginning with the definitions, that one is still something that we are working on to implement. For instance, I have like an early modern sort of a telephone book of 950 people who lived all in one city, but their connection is really much more of, a collective study of their lives, but it's not that they are directly linked to each other as all the people that I have worked on from the diaries, where there is closely a connection between one and the other. And with this idea, so I hope that you find, first of all, interest in history, because we can learn so much from the past. That will help us, also to create a bright future. And also what you can do with digital humanities and digital history to really sharpen our ideas about the past, to try to figure out how to raise new questions. With all these types of tools that are available, we can really come to a much better understanding of people's lives of the past. And with that, I will stop for now. And I thank you so much for listening today to my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, madam, for your insightful theme address. Now the floor is open for interactions. Since we're running short of time, we will be taking up only few questions. Now I request Vinay Sagar sir to moderate the interactive session.
Good evening, Professor Bettina. I am the student of Professor late Noboru Karashima, who was a professor of South Asian Studies Department in Tokyo University. So my question is, it is a very interesting presentation, role of digital technology as far as historical studies is concerned. So my question would be, will interdisciplinary studies help us in modern times? Will interdisciplinary studies help us in especially clearly understanding the history? What is your opinion?
Thank you very much for your very good question. And I think yes. I mean, of course, otherwise I would not do this type of research. For me, well, my little research project is rather small. And of course, it will just basically show to understand much better how the past really shaped. There are so many misconceptions about the Tokugawa period, about the lives of the samurai, the shogun. And so, issues, for instance, about gender or status and class have been questioned. And I think when you go with these micro histories and show them with the digital tools, you can break down some of the misconceptions very easily. Now, using also digital humanities for modern times is very important. For instance, now take our time of Corona. In our pandemic, there's so much you can show on graphs now, the distribution of, the hospitals, pharmacies, healthcare, where can patients go to, all these things can be studied. And if you do that with GIS and digital tools, you will be better prepared the next time of where is something missing in our grid? Where are the loopholes? Why did we never notice that before? So I think, using these kinds of analysis, also the spread of information, you can trace and track. And I mean, many people are doing that already. Much of it has to do with Google searches and Google Map, right? This is basically the same idea. So I think it will really help and improve what we know and also how to prepare for disasters and all kinds of things in our lives that should be certainly helpful. But thank you again for your wonderful.
To a great extent, will it help us in streamlining the chronological studies as far as history is concerned? Chronological studies.
Yes, chronological. Yes. Yeah. You can trace.
Yeah, you can streamline.
Yes, there are so many things you can do with that. Wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, in the present scenario, will digital humanities create a new scope, especially on this particular base like relationships?
You mean in terms of these relationships, if that will be something to, as a new trend in the analysis?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it does exist already. I mean, many of the digital humanities groups, every time we have a conference, there's always a group of, by now, friends of mine who work on very similar things in different cultures though. So as I said, I mean, I know of a Korean project, Taiwanese, China, Japan, many in Europe. I don't know one yet in India, but I hope there is one. But many other countries, they already started very similar types of research, and all of them are using these, different tools, and they put them together differently. But creating databases is basically what they all are doing in order for us, you can build upon them over a long time. The Harvard University's China database is probably the oldest by now, that is also very well structured. So yes, we are a group. We are already a group of scholars working on that together. Thank you.
As a historian, what challenges did you face while preparing the database of history of Japan?
I'm not an engineer. That is the biggest challenge. Today, I tried to work on my database and something did not work. And I had to write an email to Germany, to my programmer for help. I said, something is wrong, help me. And that is the biggest challenge that I have. Many of my colleagues who work with databases and who are historians, they have put time aside to learn how to program. I have not. I'm not proud of it, But I have just so many other work that I just cannot also learn how to program. That is probably the biggest challenge, that I cannot go behind my database and fix bugs. I cannot. I see them, but I cannot fix them. So that is my biggest challenge. So everyone here, if you know how to program, wonderful. I congratulate you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful theme address. A small announcement before presidential remarks. We will be sending the feedback form in the link in the chat box. as well as to your registered emails, which will be activated for the next 48 hours. Kindly fill the same and send it back. You will be receiving the e-certificates from 7 to 10 days. Very shortly, we will meet in one more international webinar of our evening college, that is on 9th April 2021, the Friday, on the theme Global Standards in Library Science Session 2. Now I request Shri W.D. Ashok Sir, Honorary Trustee, Seshadripuram Educational Trust, to render the presidential remarks. Over to you, sir.
This international webinar from Seshadripuram Evening Degree College, Digital Humanities Session 7. This has been carried out today with the participation from Sophia University, Tokyo, Japan, which was giving the importance of the Japanese history networking, studying about the networking using the different modes of networks. And Professor Bettina Madam has given a knowledge about Japan's biographical database, the origin, how it has started, its purpose for research, its use in the classroom, how it can be made. All this has been represented by Bettina Madam about the studying networking, Japanese history in order. Coming to the main digital humanities, that is today's theme gives us the knowledge about digital humanities and says about how represents a bridge between the arts, humanities, and technology, how all this have come together in order to safeguard or to store or to say that how it can be brought about to involve great work of arts or literature, discussing about the different criteria about the culture or about a person or whatever the topography, what madam has just discussed about, and she has given a thorough knowledge about how actually the study of languages or philosophy of ancient cultures, examining the traditions of another country becomes important, and how our country has to replicate the same ideas of digital humanities and how it can be digitalized. So sort of projects using computers to create new avenues for teaching and research in the humanities has to be carried out. Digital technology promises to remove many barriers and inequalities in the search for knowledge. So I would like to say that in today's session, Madam has just given few examples. That is, Bettina Madam has said about some of the family relations in Japan, and she has used one example, Sunsi Nikki diary, saying that how the family history of the actual royal family, the kings, how the family tree was made up, and how different places they were networking, and how today's technology using the GPS, that is geographical position, can be used, and social networking can be improved, and similarly how the adaptations can be done in different areas of digital humanities. So I just would say that Seshadripuram Evening Degree College, in the purpose of bringing about new technology to be used in digital humanities, have gone about with these 7 sessions in many of the bringing about different universities like Stanford University or the Australian University, bringing about different areas to see that how different people are making about the digital humanities and using about technologies. So I would like to thank principal and the coordinators who are involved in today's program and wishing them all the best. Thank you once again.
Once again, thank you to one and all. Sir, can we conclude the webinar?